My name is Josephine. I'm 27 years old, and I once believed family meant unconditional love. 7 months pregnant in a blinding snowstorm, my world shattered when my mother said those 6 words: "Don't ever show your face again." I made choices that cost me everything, but what happened 7 years later changed us all forever. The pain of rejection carved me into someone stronger than I ever imagined possible. Where are you watching from today? Hit like and subscribe if family has ever hurt you deeply, because sometimes those closest to us leave the deepest wounds. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota where everyone knew everyone's business. Our house was the white one with blue shutters on Maple Street, where my mother Diane kept the lawn perfectly manicured and the interior spotless. My father Thomas was the high school principal respected in the community, but practically invisible in our home. He existed in my mother's shadow, nodding along to her decisions, while burying himself in work. Mom ran our household like a military operation. Beds made with hospital corners. Dinner at 6 sharp. Church every Sunday in pressed clothes and practiced smiles. "Appearances matter most," she'd remind me while tugging my hair into painfully tight braids. "People judge our entire family by your behavior." My sister Amanda was 5 years older and the golden child who followed all the rules. She got straight A's, played violin in the church orchestra, and dated boys my mother approved of. I was the problem child. The one who asked too many questions during Sunday school and preferred jeans with holes to the floral dresses Mom bought me. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my teenage years. Every report card with a B instead of an A, every missed curfew, every argument about the length of my skirt widened the gap between us. By 17, I was suffocating. I dyed streaks of purple in my hair, started hanging out with kids my parents called troublemakers, and counted down the days until graduation. My father would sigh and look away during our arguments, while my mother threatened to pray the rebellion out of me. "You're breaking your mother's heart," Dad would say quietly after Mom stormed off, but he never actually defended me. Amanda surprisingly became my secret ally. "Just keep your head down until college," she'd whisper. "Then you can breathe." I followed her advice barely. Community college 20 miles away became my escape plan. I couldn't afford anything farther, but it was freedom enough. That's where I met Jackson. He was sitting on a patch of grass outside the student center, guitar in hand, dark hair falling into his eyes as his fingers moved across the strings. I stopped walking, pretending to check my phone while actually listening to him play. "Like what you hear?" he asked, catching me staring. I blushed but didn't look away. "It's not bad." He laughed, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "High praise. I'm Jackson." "Josephine," I replied, "but everyone calls me Joe." "Josephine suits you better," he said. "Too pretty for a nickname." That was the beginning. Jackson was everything my parents would hate. His arms covered in tattoos telling the story of his life. His dream of making it as a musician instead of having a practical career. His apartment shared with 2 other band members above the local bar. He was also gentle in ways I'd never experienced. He listened when I talked about my dreams of becoming a nurse. He held my hand in public without caring who saw. He told me I was perfect exactly as I was. After 3 months of dating, I finally worked up the courage to bring him to Sunday dinner. Mom took one look at his tattooed arms and nearly choked on her pot roast. "So Jackson," my father attempted polite conversation. "What are your career plans?" "My band's building a following," Jackson explained enthusiastically. "We're booking bigger venues now. I also teach guitar lessons on the side." Mom's smile was tight. "How interesting. And your family?" "Just my mom. She lives in California. Dad left when I was 10. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mom excused herself to check on dessert, and Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. In the kitchen later, Mom grabbed my arm. "He's not suitable, Josephine. You can do so much better." "Better according to who you—" I pulled away. "He makes me happy." "Happiness doesn't pay bills. That boy has no future." It was our first major fight about Jackson, but not the last. For the next 5 months, every conversation circled back to him. My parents started setting me up on accidental meetings with church boys they approved of. I started lying about where I was going and who I was with. 8 months into our relationship, Jackson asked me to move in with him. He'd found a small apartment we could afford together. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom with water stains on the ceiling and neighbors who fought loudly, but it would be ours. I said yes without hesitation. When I told my parents, Mom threw the dish she was washing into the sink, shattering it. "If you move in with him, you're choosing sin," she said, voice shaking. "We didn't raise you to throw yourself away on the first boy who shows you attention. This isn't about religion, Mom. This is about you controlling every aspect of my life. While you live under our roof, I won't be under your roof anymore. That's the point." Dad finally spoke up. "Think about this, Joe. You're only 19. "I have thought about it. I love him." Mom laughed bitterly. "Love you don't even know what that word means. When he leaves you for someone else, don't come crying back here." I packed my things that night with Amanda helping me carry boxes to my car. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "No," I admitted. "But I'm sure I can't stay here anymore." Living with Jackson felt like breathing for the first time. We decorated our tiny apartment with thrift store finds and string lights. We ate ramen noodles when money was tight and splurged on takeout when he got paid for a gig. We stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. For the first time in my life, I felt seen, accepted, loved without conditions. I convinced myself my parents would come around eventually. That once they saw how happy I was, they'd welcome Jackson into the family. That time would heal the rift between us. I was so naive. The pregnancy test wasn't planned. I'd missed my period and felt constantly nauseous, but I blamed it on stress from my classes and working part-time at the campus coffee shop. When I finally bought a test from the drugstore, I expected it to be negative. 2 pink lines appeared almost immediately. I sat on the bathroom floor staring at the plastic stick in disbelief. I was 20 years old, halfway through my nursing program, barely making ends meet. A baby wasn't part of the plan. But as the shock wore off, a strange calm settled over me. A baby. Our baby. A tiny person who would be half me, half Jackson. The idea terrified and thrilled me simultaneously. When Jackson came home from his gig that night, I was sitting on our second-hand couch with the test hidden behind my back. "Hey, beautiful," he greeted me with a kiss. "You wouldn't believe the crowd tonight. The manager wants us back next weekend." "That's great," I said, my voice shakier than I intended. "I need to show you something." His expression shifted as I revealed the pregnancy test. He took it from me, staring at it with wide eyes. "Are you sure?" he asked. I nodded. I took 2 tests. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing our small living room. "A baby. Wow. Wow. I know it's not what we planned," I said, tears filling my eyes. "But I already love it. Our baby." Jackson knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. "Hey, don't cry. We can do this. I'll pick up more gigs. Maybe find a day job too. We'll figure it out." "Really?" I searched his face for doubt. "Really," he said, but something flickered in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or uncertainty. "We're a family now, right?" Despite his words, I sensed his reservation, but I pushed the worry aside, focusing instead on the fact that he hadn't run away screaming. It was a start. Over the next few days, the reality of our situation set in. Our apartment was barely big enough for 2 people, let alone 3. Our income could hardly cover our current expenses. I would need to take time off school after the birth. But alongside these practical concerns grew a fierce determination. This baby deserved everything, and I would find a way to provide it. As my first trimester progressed, I began to think about my parents. Despite our differences, I couldn't imagine them not wanting to know their grandchild. Maybe this baby could be the bridge that reconnected us. "I want to tell my family," I told Jackson one evening. He looked surprised. Are you sure after everything? They're still my parents, and this is their grandchild. Jackson squeezed my hand supportively. If that's what you want, I'm with you. I called my mother the next day, the first time we'd spoken in months. The conversation was stilted formal as if we were strangers. I have some news I'd like to share in person, I said. Could we come for dinner this Sunday? A pause. With Jackson and me. Another long pause. I suppose that would be all right. That Sunday I dressed carefully in a blue dress that had always been my mother's favorite, though it now felt slightly tight around my still-hidden bump. Jackson wore a button-down shirt without any visible tattoos, his hair neatly combed. It'll be fine, he assured me as we drove, though I could see his knuckles white on the steering wheel. My mother opened the door with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Dad offered an awkward handshake to Jackson. Amanda, visiting for the weekend, gave me a genuine hug and whispered, "Missed you." Dinner was painfully polite, everyone avoiding any topic that might cause conflict. Mom asked about my classes. Dad talked about the school basketball team's winning streak. Jackson complimented the food repeatedly. As Mom brought out dessert, I knew it was time. Mom, Dad. I began, my heart pounding. We have something to tell you. I reached for Jackson's hand under the table. I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby. The silence was deafening. Mom froze dessert plates still in hand. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. Amanda's eyes widened. You're what? Mom finally asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Pregnant. About 12 weeks along. She set the plates down with deliberate care. I see. Dad looked at his hands. Amanda shot me a sympathetic glance. Is this why you came to tell us you've complicated your mistake further? Mom's voice was ice. It's not a mistake, I said, anger rising. It's a baby, your grandchild. A child needs a stable home, married parents, security. Mom's words came faster, sharper. Not two children playing house. We're not children, Jackson interjected, and we love each other. Mom turned to him, eyes flashing. And what will you provide for my daughter and this baby guitar lessons? Dreams of stardom. That's enough, I said, standing up. We didn't come here for your judgment. We came because family should know family. Family. Mom laughed bitterly. Family respects values, traditions. Family doesn't run off with the first boy who shows interest and end up pregnant out of wedlock. Dad finally spoke. Diane, please. Let's all calm down. No, Thomas. I won't pretend this is acceptable. She turned back to me. You have a choice to make, Josephine. You can come home, get proper support, and we'll figure out what's best for this child. Or you can leave with him and continue down this irresponsible path. Are you serious? I stared at her in disbelief. You're making me choose. I'm giving you a chance to fix this. There's nothing to fix, I shouted, tears streaming now. I'm having this baby with Jackson. That's not changing. Then I don't know what you expected from this visit, Mom said coldly. I looked to my father, hoping for support, but he stared at his plate. Only Amanda spoke up. Mom, this is your grandchild. Not if she chooses him over her family, Mom snapped. I grabbed my purse, shaking with anger and hurt. Jackson is my family now, and so is our baby. As we headed for the door, I looked back at my parents. I had hoped you might actually be happy for me, that you might love this baby regardless of how you feel about our choices. Josephine, my mother called as I reached the door. I turned, hope rising that she might relent. Instead, she said, if you walk out that door with him, don't expect us to pick up the pieces when this falls apart. I walked out. In the car, I broke down completely. Jackson held me while I sobbed, the full weight of my family's rejection crushing me. We don't need them, he whispered, wiping my tears. We'll make our own family. Me, you, and the baby. That's all we need. I wanted desperately to believe him, to believe we could do this alone. But as we drove back to our tiny apartment, a cold fear settled in my stomach. What if we couldn't? What if Mom was right? I pushed the thought away, placing a hand on my still flat abdomen. This baby was worth fighting for, worth losing everything for. I had to believe that. What I didn't know then was that I would soon lose even more than I thought possible. As my pregnancy progressed, our financial situation grew increasingly precarious. My morning sickness was so severe that I had to reduce my hours at the coffee shop, cutting our already tight budget even further. Jackson promised to make up the difference by booking more gigs, often playing 4 or 5 nights a week at local bars and events. "We need to start saving for baby stuff," I told him one evening as I calculated our expenses. "Crib car seat, stroller, diapers. It adds up fast." I know, Jackson said, kissing the top of my head. "Don't worry. The band's getting more recognition. Better venues mean better pay." But better venues also meant later nights and more time away from home. Some nights he wouldn't return until 3 or 4 in the morning, reeking of cigarettes and alcohol. When I expressed concern, he'd blame the bar atmosphere. "You know I can't control where we play, Joe," he'd say defensively. "This is for us. For the baby." I tried to believe him. I needed to believe him. With my family out of the picture, Jackson was all I had. By my 5th month, my baby bump was undeniable. I found a job as a receptionist at a dental office with more regular hours and better pay than the coffee shop. The office manager, a kind woman named Brenda, didn't seem to mind my pregnancy and even gave me a comfortable chair that eased my back pain. "My daughter was a single mom too," she confided one day. "Toughest job there is, but worth every second." I didn't correct her assumption about being single. It felt increasingly accurate as Jackson spent more time away from home. Each week, I would set aside a small portion of my paycheck for baby supplies, hiding the cash in an envelope taped behind our dresser. It wasn't much, but watching it grow gave me a sense of accomplishment. I was doing something concrete for my baby. During this time, I made multiple attempts to reconnect with my parents. I called every Sunday afternoon, sometimes letting the phone ring for minutes before giving up. On the rare occasions when someone answered, it was usually my father who would speak briefly before making an excuse to hang up. "Your mother needs time," he'd say awkwardly. "The baby will be here in a few months," I reminded him during one such call. "Your grandchild, Dad." A heavy silence. "I know, Joe. Do you want to know if it's a boy or girl? We had the ultrasound last week." Another pause. "I suppose so." "It's a girl," I said, trying to infuse my voice with the joy I felt. "Healthy and perfect." That's wonderful," he said, and for a moment I heard genuine emotion in his voice. "A granddaughter." Hope sparked in my chest. "Would you like to see the ultrasound picture? I could email it." Before he could answer, I heard my mother's voice in the background. The call ended abruptly. I sat on our worn couch phone still in hand and allowed myself to cry. My daughter would have a grandmother who didn't want her. A grandfather too weak to stand up for her. The injustice of it burned inside me. My sister Amanda became my secret lifeline during these months. She would call when our parents weren't home, and even visited twice bringing small gifts for the baby. "They're being stubborn idiots," she said during one visit, helping me fold tiny onesies. "Mom especially. She's so caught up in what people at church might think that she's missing out on this beautiful thing." "Do you think she'll ever come around?" I asked. Amanda sighed. "Eventually, maybe. But Joe, I need to tell you something about Jackson." My hands stilled on the baby clothes. "What about him?" "There are rumors," she said carefully. "People have seen him around town with other women after his gigs." "That's ridiculous," I said immediately. "He's working all those nights to support us." "I'm sure he is working," Amanda said gently. "But Kate Robinson saw him at O'Malley's with his arm around some redhead, and they didn't look like just friends." "Kate never liked me," I dismissed. "She's probably trying to stir up trouble." Amanda didn't push, but I caught the concern in her eyes. It planted a seed of doubt I couldn't quite shake. That night when Jackson came home late, I noticed a smudge of what looked like lipstick on his collar. When questioned, he exploded in anger. "Are you serious right now? I'm out there busting my ass to provide for you and the baby, and you're accusing me of cheating?" His outburst was so unlike him that I immediately backpedaled, apologizing and blaming pregnancy hormones. He softened, pulling me into a hug. "I would never cheat on you, Joe. You and the baby are everything to me." I wanted so badly to believe him, but that night as he slept, I checked his phone for the first time. There were several text messages from someone named Melody with heart emojis. The most recent read, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you tomorrow." My heart sank, but I was too afraid to confront him again. Too afraid of losing the only support I had left. So I pretended not to have seen, telling myself there must be an explanation. Maybe Melody was a fan of the band. Maybe the texts weren't what they seemed. By my 7th month, I was exhausted all the time. My feet and ankles swelled painfully after each shift at the dental office. The baby was active, especially at night, kicking and rolling in ways that made sleep nearly impossible. Jackson's absences became more frequent, his excuses less convincing. "The band got offered a last-minute gig in Chicago," he announced one Friday morning. "Great money. We'll be back Sunday night." Chicago. That's a 4-hour drive. Is that safe with the van's condition? "We fixed the brakes," he said dismissively. "This could be a big break for us, Joe." He kissed me goodbye and left, promising to call that night. He didn't. I spent the weekend alone, trying to ignore the growing dread in my stomach. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't face what that might mean. Instead, I focused on preparing for the baby, washing tiny clothes and rearranging our small living space to make room for the crib I still couldn't afford. On Sunday evening, I received a text from an unknown number with a photo attached. When I opened it, my world collapsed. It was Jackson, clearly drunk, his arms around a tattooed blonde woman, kissing her deeply. The message read, "Thought you should know what your baby daddy does on gigs. Sorry." I sat in stunned silence, staring at the image until it blurred through my tears. All the suspicions I'd been denying crashed down on me at once. The late nights, the defensive behavior, the unexplained expenses, the lipstick stains. When Jackson returned that night, I was waiting, phone in hand, with the photo displayed. "I can explain," he started, but I cut him off. "Don't bother. How long has this been going on?" He sank onto the couch, suddenly looking very young and very scared. "It's not serious. Just blowing off steam." "How many women, Jackson?" He looked away. "I don't know. A few." The admission hit me like a physical blow. "A few? While I'm carrying your child. You don't understand the pressure I'm under," he said, a note of pleading in his voice. "Suddenly I'm supposed to support a family, be a father. It's too much." "Too much?" I repeated incredulously. "What do you think this has been like for me? I lost my family for you. I'm giving up my education for this baby. I work until my feet are so swollen I can barely walk home. And you're blowing off steam with random women." "I'm sorry," he said, and I could see tears in his eyes. "I love you, Joe. I'll do better. I promise." But something had broken inside me, something that couldn't be fixed with promises. Still, with my due date approaching and nowhere else to turn, I found myself doing what my mother had always warned against, accepting less than I deserved. "No more gigs out of town," I said finally. "No more late nights. And I want to see your phone whenever I ask." He agreed immediately, seemingly relieved I wasn't kicking him out. For the next few weeks, he made a show of being attentive, coming straight home after local gigs, bringing me small gifts, talking excitedly about the baby. But trust once broken is nearly impossible to restore. I watched him constantly for signs of deception. I checked his phone when he showered. I called the venues to verify he was actually playing there. The relationship that had once been my escape from control had become another prison of anxiety and suspicion. As my 7th month rounded into my 8th, winter descended on Minnesota with a vengeance. Snow piled in drifts against our apartment building. Temperatures plunged below zero. The heating in our old building struggled to keep up, leaving me bundled in layers, even indoors. I had no way of knowing that the worst snowstorm in decades was about to hit, bringing with it a night that would change the course of my life forever. The day began like any other. I woke up with my daughter kicking energetically inside me, a morning ritual I had come to love despite the discomfort. I was exactly 30 weeks pregnant with 10 more to go, though my doctor had warned me that with my blood pressure creeping up early, delivery was a possibility. "Make sure you rest," Dr. Keller had instructed at my last appointment. "Any signs of labor, you come straight in." The weather forecast that morning called for heavy snow beginning in the afternoon, potentially the worst storm of the season. Jackson had a gig at a local bar, but promised he'd be home early before the worst hit. "I'll just play the first set and tell them I need to get back to my pregnant girlfriend," he assured me, placing a protective hand on my belly. "Won't be later than 9, promise." I kissed him goodbye, watching from our apartment window as he loaded his guitar into his beat-up Honda, which we'd recently purchased to replace the unreliable van. The sky was already ominous, heavy gray clouds threatening above. At work, Brenda took one look at me and frowned. "You should go home now, honey. That storm's coming in faster than they predicted." I glanced out the office window at the snow already beginning to fall. "I'm scheduled until 5. And I'm telling you to leave now," she said firmly. "I've lived in Minnesota my whole life. This is going to be a bad one." By the time I waddled to the car, an inch of snow already covered the ground and the wind had picked up considerably. The 15-minute drive home took nearly 30 as visibility decreased. I called Jackson once I arrived safely at the apartment. "The storm's getting bad," I told him. "Are you sure you should still play tonight?" "We need the money, Joe," he replied, the sound of the band setting up in the background. "But I promise I'll leave by 8 at the latest. Just stay put and stay warm." By 4 o'clock, the snow was falling in thick, heavy curtains. I tried calling Jackson again, but got no answer. Texts went unread. I told myself he was probably performing and couldn't check his phone. At 5, the power in our apartment building flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The temperature began to drop immediately. I bundled up in every blanket we owned, but within an hour I could see my breath inside the apartment. As darkness fell, my anxiety grew. Outside, the snow was now knee-deep and still falling rapidly. The wind howled around the building, creating ghostly moans through the poorly sealed windows. I tried Jackson again. No answer. By 7, I was shivering uncontrollably despite the layers. My back had begun to ache with a persistent pain that wrapped around to my abdomen. The baby moved restlessly as if sensing my distress. I tried to remember what I'd learned in the one birthing class I'd managed to attend. False contractions were normal, especially in the 3rd trimester. Nothing to worry about. When the first real contraction hit at 7:30, I knew instantly this was different. A vice-like pain gripped my entire midsection, stealing my breath. I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands, dialing Jackson again. Straight to voicemail. The contractions continued coming every 15 minutes. Not yet close enough to panic, but definitely concerning for a 30-week pregnancy. After the 3rd one, I made a decision. I needed to get to the hospital with or without Jackson. I called him one last time, leaving a trembling voicemail. "The baby's coming. I'm going to the hospital. Please meet me there." Dressing was an ordeal. Each movement triggered waves of pain. I pulled on my heaviest coat, wrapped a scarf around my neck, and stepped into boots. The emergency bag I'd packed weeks ago waited by the door, and I grabbed it on my way out. The scene outside was apocalyptic. Snow whipped horizontally in the howling wind. The parking lot had disappeared beneath a white blanket with only the tops of cars visible. My own car was a snow-covered lump in the distance. I fought my way through the storm, each step an immense effort. Halfway to the car, a contraction hit so hard I doubled over, nearly falling into the snow. Somehow I made it to the car and brushed enough snow off to open the door. The engine started, thankfully, but as I inched out of the parking lot, I realized with growing horror that I couldn't see the road. The streetlights were out, the entire town in blackness except for the occasional glow of a generator-powered home. I drove by memory more than sight, creeping along at walking speed. 3 blocks from our apartment, the car slid on an ice patch and veered into a snowbank. The engine revved, but the wheels spun uselessly. I was stuck. Panic rose in my throat as another contraction seized me. They were coming closer now, maybe 10 minutes apart. I tried Jackson again. Nothing. With shaking fingers, I scrolled through my contacts looking for anyone who might help. Friends all lived too far away. Neighbors, none I knew well enough to call in a blizzard. My thumb hovered over Mom. Despite everything, she was still programmed in my phone. Still my emergency contact. I hesitated, remembering her cold words, her rejection. But I was alone in labor, trapped in a blizzard. If ever there was an emergency, I pressed call. It rang 4 times before she answered. "Josephine." Her voice was suspicious, as if expecting a trap. "Mom," I sobbed, relief at hearing her voice overwhelming me momentarily. "I need help. I'm in labor, my car's stuck in the snow, and Jackson isn't answering. I don't know what to do." A pause. "Where's the father of your child?" "I don't know," I admitted, another contraction building. "Please, Mom, I'm scared." "This is exactly what I warned you about," she said, her voice hardening. "He's abandoned you just like I said he would." "Mom, please," I begged. "I need to get to the hospital." The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally she spoke, her voice flat and distant. "Don't ever show your face again. You made your choice." The line went dead. I stared at the phone in disbelief, another contraction washing over me. My own mother had just refused to help me while I was in premature labor during the worst storm in decades. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, that I couldn't even cry. I just sat there shaking as the snow piled higher around the car. In desperation, I called 911. The dispatcher was sympathetic but honest. "All emergency services are overwhelmed right now. We've got accidents all over the county and ambulances can't get through many roads." "What's your exact location?" I gave her the cross streets. "I'll send someone as soon as possible, but it might be a while. Is there anyone else you can call?" "No," I whispered. "There's no one." As I hung up, the reality of my situation crashed down on me. I was completely alone. The father of my child was unreachable, possibly with another woman. My mother had explicitly rejected me in my moment of greatest need. My baby was coming dangerously early, and I was trapped in a car during a blizzard. I broke. Deep guttural sobs tore from my throat as I pounded the steering wheel in anguish. Everything I'd feared, everything I'd tried to prevent was happening. My family had been right about Jackson. I'd thrown away their love for someone who couldn't be bothered to answer his phone when I went into labor. The sound of tapping on my window startled me from my breakdown. A figure bundled against the storm peered in, shouting something I couldn't hear over the wind. I cracked the window. "Are you okay?" the stranger asked, a man's voice muffled by his scarf. "I'm in labor," I managed between contractions. "I need to get to Memorial Hospital." Without hesitation, he tried to open my door, which was partly blocked by snow. "I live just down the block. My truck has chains. I can take you." I didn't stop to consider the risk of going with a stranger. In that moment, this unknown man was my only hope. He helped me through the snow to his truck, half carrying me when contractions hit. Once inside the heated cab, he introduced himself as Michael, a nurse at the very hospital I was trying to reach. "God must have sent you," I whispered, tears freezing on my cheeks. "Just lucky timing," he replied, carefully navigating the treacherous roads. "I was checking on my elderly neighbor when I saw your car." The journey to the hospital took over an hour for what would normally be a 15-minute drive. Michael kept me talking through contractions, monitoring their frequency with professional calm. "They're about 7 minutes apart now," he noted. "First baby." I nodded, gripping the door handle as another wave of pain crashed over me. "You're doing great. We're almost there." As we pulled up to the emergency entrance, my phone chimed with a text. Through tear-blurred eyes, I read Jackson's message. "Sorry, babe, crashed at Melody's place. Storm's too bad to drive. You okay? In that moment, something inside me hardened. My water broke as Michael helped me into the hospital, marking the point where one chapter of my life ended and another far more difficult one began. I was 20 years old in premature labor, abandoned by everyone I had once counted on. But as the hospital doors closed behind me, I didn't know that this rock bottom would become the foundation for a strength I never knew I possessed. The hospital lights were blindingly bright after the darkness of the storm. Nurses swarmed around me, their voices calm but urgent, as they wheeled me toward the maternity ward. My wet clothes were replaced with a hospital gown, monitors strapped to my belly, and IV inserted into my arm. 30 weeks, the doctor murmured, reviewing my hastily completed paperwork. We'll try to stop the labor if we can. Who's your support person? I swallowed hard. No one. It's just me. The pity in her eyes was unmistakable. Father of the baby. Not coming. I said another contraction, stealing my breath. Despite their efforts to halt the progress with medication, my body had its own agenda. By midnight, I was fully dilated, the contractions now rolling one into another with barely a pause between. Your baby's coming now, the doctor announced. I need you to push when I tell you. The next 2 hours were a blur of pain, exhaustion, and fear. Without anyone's hand to hold, I gripped the bed rails until my knuckles turned white. Nurses offered encouragement, but they weren't family. Weren't Jackson. Weren't my mother, who should have been there helping her daughter bring a new life into the world. At 2:17 a.m., with one final desperate push, my daughter entered the world. She didn't cry immediately, which sent a bolt of terror through me. Is she okay? I gasped. The medical team worked efficiently, suctioning her tiny airways, stimulating her delicate body. After what felt like an eternity, a thin wail filled the room. She's breathing on her own, that's excellent, the doctor said, genuine relief in her voice. But she's very small, just under 4 pounds. We need to get her to the NICU right away. They placed her on my chest for just a moment before taking her away. She was impossibly tiny, her skin nearly translucent, her face scrunched in protest at the harsh new world. Hello, Lily. I whispered the name I'd chosen weeks ago. I'm your mom. I'm here. And then she was gone, whisked away to the neonatal intensive care unit, leaving me empty-armed and alone. The hours after birth were desolate. My body, suddenly vacant, ached with a hollow pain. The nurses were kind, bringing me ice packs and pain medication, explaining what was happening with Lily. She's doing remarkably well for a 30-weeker, one nurse assured me. Strong little fighter. I was allowed to visit her 6 hours after delivery, wheeled to the NICU in a chair because I was still too weak to walk. The sight of my daughter in an incubator, tubes and wires connecting her to machines, broke something in me all over again. She was so small she could fit in my 2 hands, her chest rising and falling with rapid, shallow breaths. I reached through the holes in the incubator to touch her hand. Her fingers, perfectly formed but tiny as doll parts, curled reflexively around mine. I'm sorry, I whispered to her. I'm so sorry I couldn't keep you safe inside longer. A nurse patted my shoulder. This isn't your fault. Sometimes babies come early no matter what we do. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my stress, my unhappiness, my body's rejection of the situation had somehow caused this. That if I'd had proper support, a stable home, Lily might still be growing safely inside me. That first day I checked my phone constantly. Surely Jackson would have seen my messages by now. Surely he would come rushing in full of apologies for missing the birth. But the hours ticked by with no word. It was nearly 24 hours after Lily's birth when he finally appeared in my hospital room, unshaven and smelling faintly of alcohol. He looked like he'd dressed in a hurry, his t-shirt inside out under his jacket. Joe, he said, his eyes widening at my appearance. The baby came, but it's too early. Her name is Lily, I said flatly. She's in the NICU. She weighs less than 4 pounds. Is she going to be okay? The doctors think so. No thanks to you. He sat heavily in the visitor's chair. The storm was so bad I couldn't drive. I tried calling this morning but couldn't get through. You were at Melody's, I said, watching his face carefully. His expression confirmed everything before he spoke. How did you know? You texted me, remember? While I was in labor alone, stuck in a snowbank after my car slid off the road. Joe, I can explain. Were you sleeping with her last night? His silence was answer enough. While I was giving birth to your premature daughter, you were in bed with another woman. I stated it as a fact, my voice eerily calm. It's not like that, he started, but I cut him off. Then what is it like, Jackson? Please explain to me why you weren't answering your phone when I needed you. Why a complete stranger had to rescue me during the worst moment of my life. I messed up, he admitted, tears filling his eyes. I'm so sorry, Joe. I was scared. I'm not ready to be a father. But seeing you like this, knowing the baby's here, I want to try. I want to be better. A week ago, I might have believed him, might have forgiven him out of desperation and fear of being alone. But something fundamental had shifted in me the moment I held Lily. I now had someone who needed me to be stronger than I'd ever been. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my room. Get out of our lives. Joe, please. She's my daughter, too. A daughter you couldn't be bothered to show up for. A daughter whose mother could have died in that storm with no one to help her. You can't keep her from me, he said, anger starting to replace his remorse. I'm not keeping her from you, but I'm not keeping you in my life either. If you want to be her father, you can do it through court-ordered visitation and child support. You need me, he insisted. How are you going to manage alone? The question that would have terrified me days earlier now just made me tired. I already am managing alone. I have been for months while you were out with other women. This isn't fair, he protested. No, I agreed. It isn't fair that my daughter was born 10 weeks early. It isn't fair that my mother refused to help me when I begged. And it isn't fair that the man who claimed to love me was sleeping with someone else while I gave birth alone. But here we are. After Jackson left, alternating between apologies and accusations, I sat in the sterile hospital room feeling strangely empty. I had just cut ties with the last person I had considered family. I was now truly alone with a premature baby in the NICU and nowhere to go once we were discharged. The next days passed in a blur of NICU visits, pumping breast milk and fitful sleep, interrupted by nurses checking my vitals. I was healing physically, but inside I felt hollowed out. 5 days after Lily's birth, the hospital social worker came to see me. A kind-faced woman named Mariah. She asked practical questions about my discharge plan. Where will you be going when you leave? She asked gently. I don't know, I admitted. Our apartment is too cold for a preemie, even if the power's back on. And I can't afford it alone anyway. The father? Not in the picture anymore. Family support? I laughed bitterly. My mother told me not to show my face again when I called for help during labor. Mariah made notes, her expression neutral but compassionate. That's a difficult situation. But you're not the first new mother to face these challenges, and there are resources available. She outlined options: a women's shelter with a program specifically for new mothers, temporary housing assistance connections to legal aid for child support, food stamps and medical assistance for Lily. It won't be easy, she warned, but you're not alone in this journey. It feels like I am, I confessed. Let me tell you what I see, Mariah said, setting down her clipboard. I see a young woman who survived premature labor during a blizzard, who's at her baby's side every possible moment, who's making difficult but healthy decisions about toxic relationships. That's not someone who's going to fail. Her words were the first kindness I'd received that wasn't tinged with pity, and they broke through the numbness I'd been hiding behind. I cried, then really cried, for everything I'd lost and everything that lay ahead. When I was discharged 3 days later, Lily remained in the NICU, expected to stay for at least another month until she reached 5 pounds. I went to a motel, the only option, until a space opened at the women's shelter Mariah had recommended. The motel room was bleak. A sagging double bed, faded wallpaper peeling at the corners, the persistent smell of old cigarettes despite the no smoking sign. I sat on the edge of the bed, my postpartum body aching, my breasts painfully engorged with milk for a baby who wasn't with me. This was rock bottom. Completely alone, physically depleted, emotionally shattered, separated from my newborn with no home and barely enough money for another week at this dismal motel. I sank to the threadbare carpet and sobbed until I had nothing left. Then, in the silence that followed, I felt a strange calm descend. There was a certain freedom in having lost everything. The only way forward was up. I thought of Lily fighting for every breath in her incubator. If my tiny daughter could be so strong, how could I be anything less? I pulled myself up off the floor and looked in the mirror at my tear-stained face, my unwashed hair, the dark circles under my eyes. "This is not who we are," I told my reflection firmly. "This is not who we will be." I took out my phone and called Mariah. "I'm ready for that shelter spot when it opens. And I want information about finishing my nursing degree with a baby. I need to make a plan." That night in the motel room, I made a promise to Lily and to myself. We would not just survive this. We would build something better than what I'd lost. Something that couldn't be taken away by a mother's rejection or a lover's betrayal. It was the first decision I made not out of fear or desperation, but from a place of determination. I didn't know it then, but that moment on the motel room floor marked the real beginning of our story. The women's shelter was nothing like I'd imagined. Instead of the institutional dormitory-style arrangement I'd feared, Hope House was a converted Victorian home with private and shared rooms, a large communal kitchen, and a fenced backyard where children could play safely. My room, which I would eventually share with Lily, had clearly been decorated with care-pale yellow walls, a second-hand crib with a new mattress, a rocking chair by the window. On the bed lay a handmade quilt and a welcome basket with essentials toiletries, a journal, a bus pass, and a handwritten note. "New beginnings start here." The shelter housed 8 women and 5 children, all at different stages of rebuilding their lives. Some, like me, were fleeing unhealthy relationships. Others had escaped domestic violence, addiction, or homelessness. Despite our different stories, a community formed quickly among us, bound by shared determination to create better futures. For the first month, I established a routine: mornings at the NICU with Lily, afternoons working with Hope House counselors on housing applications and benefits paperwork, evenings attending parenting and financial literacy classes. It was exhausting, but for the first time in my life, I felt completely focused. Lily grew stronger each day, her tiny body slowly filling out her lungs, developing, her feeding improving. The NICU nurses taught me to care for her special needs, how to read her subtle cues, how to handle her fragile body, how to help her when she forgot to breathe, a common issue in preemies. "You're a natural," one nurse commented as I confidently changed Lily's diaper, careful of the monitor wires. "Some parents are too afraid to touch their babies, but not you." "She's the one thing I can't afford to be afraid of," I replied. When Lily finally reached 5 pounds at 8 weeks old, the doctors approved her discharge. Bringing her to Hope House was terrifying and exhilarating. Suddenly, I was solely responsible for this tiny human without the safety net of hospital staff. The other women rallied around me those first nights, taking turns holding Lily so I could shower or nap, offering advice from their own experiences, celebrating each small milestone as if she were everyone's child. Maya, a domestic violence survivor with a 3-year-old son, became my closest friend at the shelter. She'd been there the longest, nearly ready to transition to independent housing. "The key is to take advantage of every resource they offer," she advised me. "Don't be too proud to accept help. That's how the system is designed." I followed her guidance, applying for every assistance program available, WIC for formula, when my milk supply proved insufficient, food stamps, childcare subsidies, housing assistance. Each acceptance letter felt like a small victory, another step towards stability. The shelter's 2-year nursing program partnership became my lifeline to a future career. With childcare provided on site, I began taking one class at a time at the community college, determined to finish the degree I'd abandoned when pregnancy and poverty intervened. Time moved differently with a baby. Days blurred together in a cycle of feedings, diaper changes, short naps, and stolen moments of study. I measured progress not in weeks or months, but in Lily's development the first time she focused on my face, Her first real smile at 2 months, the way she began to coo and babble at 3 months. Jackson attempted contact sporadically during this time, sometimes with heartfelt apologies, sometimes with angry demands to see his daughter. I neither encouraged nor completely blocked these efforts, instead establishing clear boundaries, supervised visits, only no overnight stays, consistent child support payments. His interest waned quickly when faced with these restrictions. The visits became less frequent, the child support payments often late or missing entirely. By Lily's first birthday, he was largely absent, appearing only when guilt or a new girlfriend's curiosity about his daughter prompted contact. My parents remained completely silent. I'd sent a birth announcement with Lily's photo, then another card when she came home from the NICU, both returned unopened. My sister Amanda maintained secret contact, visiting once when she was in the area for a conference, bringing gifts and taking pictures. She promised not to share with our parents. "Mom asks about you sometimes," Amanda admitted during that visit. "When Dad's not around, I think she wants to know you're okay but is too stubborn to reach out. She knows where to find me," I said, the wound still too raw to consider reconciliation. By Lily's second birthday, our lives had transformed completely. I had completed half my nursing coursework, working weekends as a certified nursing assistant at a local care facility. We'd transitioned from the shelter to a small subsidized apartment, nothing fancy but clean, safe, and ours alone. Lily had grown into a bright, curious toddler with Jackson's dark hair and my green eyes. Despite her premature start, she hit developmental milestones right on schedule. Her only lingering issue, some minor respiratory sensitivity during winter months. "Mama, look," became her favorite phrase as she discovered the world, bringing me stones, leaves, and dandelions with equal enthusiasm. Her joy in simple things reminded me daily that we had made the right choice in building this new life. The day I received my nursing degree 3 years after that snowstorm night was among the proudest of my life. Lily, now 4, sat between Maya and Mariah during the ceremony, clapping wildly when my name was called. "That's my mama," she announced to everyone nearby, her voice carrying across the auditorium. With my RN license, I secured a position at the same hospital where Lily had spent her first weeks. The irony wasn't lost on me that the place where I'd hit rock bottom became the foundation of our new beginning. As a labor and delivery nurse, I found particular fulfillment in supporting women through their most vulnerable moments, especially those who arrived alone or afraid. I recognized the look in their eyes, the one I'd had that snowy night. "You're stronger than you know," I would tell them, "and you're not alone." Our financial situation stabilized with my nursing salary. We moved to a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a good school district before Lily started kindergarten. I saved diligently for a down payment on a small house, determined to give her the stability I'd never had. Dating remained low on my priority list. Between work, Lily, and continuing education, there was little time for relationships. The few men I did date seemed unable to understand that my daughter would always come first, or they became uncomfortable with the independence I'd fought so hard to achieve. Then David entered our lives, a pediatrician who consulted on a difficult delivery case. We began as colleagues, became friends, and only gradually admitted the attraction growing between us. Unlike previous relationships, this one developed slowly, thoughtfully. "You're a package deal," he said after meeting Lily for the first time. "That's not a drawback. It's just a fact." His respect for the life I'd built, his patience with my trust issues, and his genuine delight in Lily's company slowly dismantled the walls I'd constructed around my heart. By Lily's 6th birthday, he had become a fixture in our lives, the father figure she'd never really had. Jackson's appearances grew even more sporadic as the years passed. He'd moved to Chicago with a band, occasionally sending birthday cards or calling on holidays. Lily accepted this distant relationship with remarkable equanimity. "Some kids have 2 parents who live together," she explained to a curious classmate. "Some have parents who live in different houses. My dad lives in a different city, but I have Mama and David here." Her resilience amazed me. Despite the chaos of her entry into the world, she had grown into a secure, happy child. Whatever mistakes I'd made, whatever hardships we'd endured, we had somehow emerged stronger for them. As Lily's 7th birthday approached, I found myself reflecting on how far we'd come from that snowy night. 7 years from rock bottom to a life I could never have imagined, in that desperate moment a career I loved, a daughter who thrived, a partner who respected us both, and a small house we would soon call our own. What I didn't know was that the circle was about to close in an unexpected way, bringing me face to face with the rejection that had shaped our journey. The call came on a Tuesday morning in April, 7 years and 2 months after Lily's birth. I was preparing breakfast before school. David had stayed over and was helping Lily with her math homework at the kitchen table, the three of us moving around each other in the comfortable choreography we'd developed. When my phone rang showing Amanda's number, I answered cheerfully. My sister and I spoke regularly. Now our relationship strengthened by her secret support during those early difficult years. "Joe," her voice was tight with emotion. "It's Mom. She's in the hospital. Heart attack." The cereal bowl I was holding slipped from my fingers, shattering on the tile floor. David looked up, instantly alert. "How bad?" I managed to ask. "They're saying she's stable but critical. They did an emergency procedure, put in stents. Dad's a mess. I thought you should know." I stood, frozen cereal and milk pooling around my slippers, fragments of the bowl scattered like my thoughts. "Joe, are you there?" "Yes," I whispered. "Which hospital?" "Memorial. The same one where Lily was born, where I now worked. Does she want to see me?" The question escaped before I could stop it, childlike in its vulnerability. Amanda hesitated. "She doesn't know I'm calling. But Joe, I think it's time. For all of you." After hanging up, I remained motionless until David gently guided me to a chair, cleaning up the broken bowl while I explained the situation to him and Lily. "Is Grandma going to die?" Lily asked, her face serious. "I don't know, honey. The doctors are helping her. Can we go see her? I want to meet my grandma." The simple request cracked something inside me. My daughter had never met her grandparents, never experienced the extended family other children took for granted. I had protected her from their rejection, but had I also denied her connections she deserved to have? "Would you like to meet her?" I asked carefully. Lily nodded. "I have a picture of her in my treasure box, the one Aunt Amanda gave me." This was news to me. "You do? It's Grandma and Grandpa at Christmas. Aunt Amanda said not to tell because it was a secret, but I look at it sometimes and make up stories about them." My heart constricted painfully. While I'd been nursing my hurt, my daughter had been creating imaginary relationships with grandparents she'd never met. David squeezed my shoulder supportively. "Whatever you decide, we're with you." The decision crystallized suddenly. "We'll go. All of us." We arrived at Memorial Hospital 2 hours later after dropping Lily at school with a promise to pick her up early. The cardiac unit was familiar territory to me professionally, but walking through those doors as a family member felt surreal. My father sat slumped in the waiting area, looking older and grayer than I remembered. He didn't notice us until David cleared his throat gently. Dad's head snapped up, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Josephine." "Hi, Dad." He stood shakily, uncertainty written across his face. "You're here." "Amanda called. How is she?" "Stable. They're saying she was lucky the blockages were caught in time." He hesitated, then added, "She's awake, asking for updates about the grandkids." The implied inclusion of Lily as one of the grandkids surprised me. "Amanda's children." Dad looked away. "Them too." The revelation that my mother had been asking about Lily even obliquely unsettled the narrative I'd constructed over 7 years of silence. "This is David," I said, filling the awkward pause. "My partner." Dad shook David's hand mechanically, his eyes never leaving my face. "You look good, Joe. Healthy." "I am. I work here now, actually. Labor and delivery." "A nurse. You finished school." Something like pride flickered across his features. "RN with a specialty in neonatal care." "And the baby. Lily. She's 7 now, in 1st grade. She's amazing." Dad's eyes filled with tears, the first I'd ever seen him shed. I have a 7-year-old granddaughter I've never met. The simple statement hung between us, heavy with 7 years of absence. Not accusatory, just profoundly sad. She'd like to meet you, I said carefully. Both of you, if that's something you want. Of course we want that, he replied immediately, then faltered. If you'll allow it. The subtle acknowledgement of their role in our estrangement opened a tiny crack in the wall I'd built. I'm picking her up from school later. We could come back. Before he could respond, a nurse appeared. Mr. Reynolds, your wife is asking for you. Dad looked torn, glancing between the nurse and me. Go, I urged. We'll be here. Will you come in with me? See her. The request surprised me. Are you sure that's what she wants? I don't know, he admitted, but it's what she needs. Walking into my mother's hospital room felt like stepping into the past. She lay small against the white sheets, monitoring equipment beeping steadily beside her. Her once dark hair was now streaked with gray, her face lined with age and illness. She turned at our entrance, her eyes widening in shock when she saw me. Josephine? Hi, Mom. What are you doing here? Her voice was weak but carried the same authoritative tone I remembered. Amanda called about your heart attack. I work here now as a nurse. She absorbed this information slowly, her gaze moving to David, then back to me. You didn't have to come. I know. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us, 7 years of unspoken words filling the room. How are you feeling? I finally asked, defaulting to my professional demeanor. Like someone's sitting on my chest, she replied. The doctor says I was lucky. You were. Cardiac events in women often go undiagnosed until it's too late. Mom studied my face with an intensity that made me want to look away. You look different. Stronger. I am stronger. And the child? Lily. Her name is Lily, Mom. Your granddaughter. Something flickered across her face, an emotion I couldn't quite identify. Is she healthy after being born early? The question revealed that she knew more than I'd expected. She's perfect. No lasting issues from her premature birth. Mom nodded, then closed her eyes briefly as if gathering strength. When she opened them again, they were filled with tears. That night in the snowstorm, I've replayed it 1,000 times. What I said to you. Don't ever show your face again, I quoted softly. You made your choice. I was wrong, she whispered, the admission clearly costing her. So wrong. I was angry and hurt, and convinced you were making a terrible mistake. But what I did was unforgivable. Her words hung in the air between us, neither of us certain how to bridge the gulf they had created. I almost died that night, I said finally. Lily almost died. A stranger saved us when our family wouldn't. Mom flinched as if I'd struck her. I know, Amanda told us later. By then it felt too late to reach out. The damage was done. It was, I agreed, but that doesn't mean it can't be repaired. Can it? She asked, genuine uncertainty in her voice. I considered the question seriously. Could 7 years of absence beginning with that ultimate betrayal ever truly be overcome? The hurt had shaped so much of who I'd become, both the strength and the scars. I don't know, I answered honestly. But Lily wants to meet her grandparents. She deserves that chance if you're willing to be the grandparents she needs. Mom nodded, tears flowing freely now. I'd like that. Very much. She'll be here after school. But Mom, I need you to understand something. I stepped closer to the bed, my voice firm. Lily comes first. Always. If this relationship is going to work, it has to be healthy for her. No judgment, no controlling behavior, no conditions on love. I understand, she said softly. The heart attack, it makes you realize what matters and what doesn't. What matters? I prompted. Family, not what others think, not being right all the time. She reached for my hand tentatively. I missed everything. Your graduation, her first steps, all of it. I allowed her to take my hand, the first physical contact in 7 years. Yes, you did. That can't be undone. But there's still time for what comes next if you want it. I do, she whispered, if you'll give us that chance. Later that afternoon, I brought Lily to the hospital. She wore her favorite blue dress, her dark hair neatly braided, clutching a handmade card for the grandmother she'd never met. Outside the hospital room, I knelt to her level. Remember what we talked about, Grandma is sick, so we need to be gentle. And if you feel uncomfortable or want to leave at any time, just squeeze my hand. Okay. Lily nodded solemnly. Is Grandma nice? The question gave me pause. Grandma loves you, I said carefully. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, but that doesn't mean they don't love you. She seemed satisfied with this answer, her resilience once again humbling me. When we entered the room, my parents were both there, my mother sitting up slightly in bed, my father standing nervously beside her. They froze at the sight of Lily, their eyes taking in every detail of the granddaughter they'd never known. Hello, Lily said confidently, stepping forward. I'm Lily Reynolds. Are you my grandma and grandpa? My mother's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob. My father's eyes filled with tears again. I stood back, allowing them this moment, David's steady presence beside me, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this anymore. Yes, sweetheart, Mom finally managed. We are, and we've waited a very long time to meet you. Lily approached the bed, extending her handmade card. I made this for you. It says, "Get well soon," and has a heart on it, because Mama said your heart is sick. Mom accepted the card with trembling hands. It's beautiful. Thank you. I have your picture in my treasure box, Lily continued matter-of-factly. Aunt Amanda gave it to me. Sometimes I talk to you in my head. This simple statement broke something open in all of us. Mom began to cry in earnest. Dad knelt awkwardly to Lily's level. We've missed you very much, he told her. Even though we didn't know you yet. That's okay, Lily said with the straightforward forgiveness only a child can offer. You know me now. As I watched my daughter charm her grandparents with stories of school and friends, I felt the last pieces of a long journey falling into place. The words that had once shattered me, "Don't ever show your face again," had lost their power. The healing wasn't instant or complete. There were difficult conversations ahead, boundaries to establish trust, to rebuild slowly. But standing in that hospital room, watching 3 generations of our family beginning to reconnect, I understood that sometimes the deepest wounds create the strongest healing. 7 years from that snowy night, I had become someone I never could have imagined in my darkest moment, a mother, a nurse, a woman who had built a life on her own terms. The rejection that once defined me had become merely part of my story, not its conclusion. And as Lily climbed carefully onto her grandmother's hospital bed to show her a drawing from her backpack, I realized that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings emerge from the most painful endings. That forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but creates space for a different future. That family in its truest sense is something we both inherit and create. Have you ever experienced a moment where someone's rejection became the catalyst for finding your own strength? Leave a comment below sharing your story of resilience. Like and subscribe. If this journey resonated with you, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that rock bottom can become a foundation. Thank you for being part of this healing journey with me, and remember that sometimes our deepest wounds lead to our greatest growth. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.